Yo book nerds, I finished reading Oil on Water by Helon Habila. I'm sorry if I am not pronouncing his name correctly. This book made me feel things. So this book takes place in Nigeria, and it is about a young journalist named Rufus. And so Rufus is following the story of a lifetime. He is searching for a woman that has been kidnapped by militants living in the jungle. The woman was the wife of someone that works in the oil industry, and so there's this big war going on between the militants and then the soldiers slash the oil companies that kind of back the soldiers. And the government really doesn't get involved because the government's not the best. They're kind of corrupt. So yeah, it's just a big war going on right now. And so the militants kidnapped this woman and are holding her for ransom. And Rufus is trying to find them in order to prove that the woman is still alive in order to make negotiations continue. This book tackles some huge topics about oil drilling and the damage that the oil drilling does to the environment. There's a lot of mention of oil spills and how it kills fish, and then how the gas flares from the oil rigging kill bats and other birds. There's just so much pollution caused by the oil drilling. Natives are being driven out of their land that they've lived on for generations. Whole villages are just being destroyed. You have these oil companies coming in and basically stealing this land. And there's just so much violence going on. Another thing that this book talks about is the difference between an idolized version of someone and then the real person. Rufus is on this journey with another journalist named Zach, and Rufus has Zach up on this pedestal because Zach is this renowned reporter and he's world famous. And then Rufus meets him and Zach is a drunk. He's very ill and can't really take care of himself. And so that's definitely a theme as well, talking about idolized versus reality. I do want to give a trigger warning for this book. Rape is mentioned a few times in here, and sometimes it's not taken very seriously. There's kind of a joke made about it at one point too, but it's not the author being insensitive. The author's trying to make a point, and other characters in the book don't like that it's being taken so lightly, but still, trigger warning for that. I did have a little bit of an issue with some of the formatting for this book. So the way that quotes are formatted is really weird. I've never seen it done like this in a book before. So like, look, if you look, there's like dashes where people are talking, and there's no dashes where the quotes end. So sometimes it was hard to know where quotes stopped, and it was also hard to know who was speaking all the time. But once I got used to it, I could figure it out. But yeah, I just was definitely not used to that kind of formatting. This story also has a lot of time jumps. There are so many flashbacks, and then there are flashbacks inside of flashbacks. The story literally like goes like this, and you kind of slowly make progress. But sometimes it got confusing because a lot of the locations overlap. And so, like, there would be a flashback, and then there'd be a flashback in a flashback. And, like, to try and keep things in order in my mind, it was like, okay, they're on this island now, but is this the second or third time that they're there? No, wait, they're now on this island, and this is the first time they're there, but they're actually there in the present, but this is a flashback. And it got a little bit confusing with all of the rewinding pretty much going on. I was able to riddle it out, but it was definitely not a linear story, and so beware. Overall though, it was a very, very good story. I definitely recommend it. It has some very, very important things to say about some very important issues going on in the world, and it was an entertaining story. I had some issues with it, but it was definitely worth the read, I think. I do want to say something about the ending, so spoiler alert, but the ending made me feel things. So, big spoiler alert, the ending is a cliffhanger, pretty much, because we spend the entire book looking for this white woman, and we find her, and then we don't find out if she is released or not. We can assume that she gets released, hopefully, but we don't actually find this out. And at first, that was like very frustrating for me because I put all this effort into this book because of all these confusing flashbacks, and then I don't even get to find out if she lives or not. And so that made me a little upset. However, after I let it sit for a minute, I realized that that was the point, and I will tell you why. So about 3/4 the way through the book, Rufus is talking to a militant named Henshaw, and he's looking for the white woman still, and he says, "We came to find out about the British woman. Is she still alive?" And Henshaw says, "Is that all you want from me, to tell you whether some foreign hostage is alive or not? Who is she in the context of the war that is going on out there? The hopes and ambitions being created and destroyed. Can't you see the bigger picture?" And that right there is why we do not find out what happens to her. The book is trying to get a bigger picture across than just this woman's story. And like, even though it was frustrating for me and it made me a little upset, I do think that that was a work of genius on Habila's part writing this. I think that we do get more out of it by not knowing what happens to her. This book has way more meaning by leaving it on a cliffhanger. So even though I don't like cliffhangers very much, I do appreciate that work of craft on the author's part. I did like it, but I also didn't like it. So yeah, I mixed feelings. I felt a lot of things. But definitely worth checking out. If you've read this story, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Otherwise, that is all for me this week, and I will talk to you guys next Monday. Hit like and subscribe. Thanks for talking books with me.